living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
I'm your host, Michael Storm, and we are live. It must be Sunday, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and wow, it's the end of the year, isn't it? 2020 has come to the end finally. I know there's a whole bunch of people out there that whooping it up. Glad to see this one go. Unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, I think 2020 is going to stick with us for a very, very long time to come, many, many years to come, in fact. So it's the last show of 2020, and I tripped over my own feet this week, wrapped up in the holiday season, if you will, no pun intended, but of course the pun is absolutely intended, or I wouldn't have actually added it, I wouldn't have said it at all. No, really just wrapped up in the holiday and family and everything that's going on for the past week, and then I dropped the ball on my guest, Felony Melanie. She was supposed to join me today for a conversation, talk about her show and the activism that she does, and the social media banning and censorship that has gone on across the social media, some of our big topics that we're going to talk about. But for all my note-taking and everything that I do, I failed to write down the most important part of that, and that was that we needed to record the show, because she wouldn't be available to do the show live, and then I'm just doing the Christmas thing and last minute shopping and preparing of meals and things like that for just the event, the thing that Christmas is. And I don't know. It's amazing how if you listened to the show last week, I didn't once mention Christmas. I didn't say anything about it, even though it was coming up, and it was just right ahead of us, less than a week away, and I didn't even say anything about it. And I think that's not so much me this time around. I do that a lot. There's no question about that. My kids are old enough now that I don't have a lot of this holiday cheer, there's nothing to celebrate per se in terms of all the commercialism and all the weird things that Christmas is and can be attributed to it over the years. And it doesn't really matter to me. It was nothing more than just something to share with the kids. Special time of the year, everybody's off school, everybody's home from work. It's just that one time of year that you really get to do that. And with the children being older, it's just not as important now. We still do it. It's kind of neat because now as they're older, they're starting to take over some of the things. Like they'll make a lot more of the cookies and stuff like that in the kitchen, and they'll put the tree up. They'll be the first ones to say, probably around October sometime, that we need to get the tree out and that they want to get the tree decorated and put up, and so we let them do that, and we have this wonderful eclectic tree over the years that we've managed to build up. It has all the sort of pop culture icons on it. It's everything from Barbie to Star Wars to South Park to the Crypt Keeper. It's a weird mix of just things that obviously big influence by myself with the pop culture things, the toys, that sort of stuff. But also, there's other things that have influenced the kids over the years. Like my oldest showed up this year one day and had a new ornament for the tree, and we try to find one every year, just something a little bit different, not exactly the same thing everybody else has on their tree. And this was pretty cool. It was a cup. It's a coffee cup, and it says Central Perk on it. So it's the Friends. It's a reference to Friends, and that's just the sort of stuff that you find on a tree. But I got lost in doing the whole Christmas thing this week, and I spaced off the fact that we had to record sooner because Felony Melanie couldn't be here for the show live today. So it's just me today. I thought about bringing Bradley Thomas in. I reached out to him on the limited shot that he'd be available on short notice, but he was not, and that is no surprise. I imagine a lot of people are still traveling home, getting over the holidays, that sort of thing, and I'm sure he's no different than that as well. Just too busy to do things last minute, and that's why I try to keep these things booked out, at least a week in advance on people. Give myself plenty of time to do some things. But if you don't write the note down, you don't. What are you going to do? You trip over your own feet really in trying to get things done. It's totally my own fault, and just the way it goes sometimes. But not a big deal, because there's so much to talk about. With 2020 coming to an end, there's all these things that we have to look forward to: more vaccines, more masks, more COVID-19 driven tyranny and fear. I mean, it's just in your face. It's everywhere. So there's plenty to talk about. Go to towardanarchy.com. As always, you can follow along there. I've created a link for the page today that you can share. If you're live with me, you click on the front page right there. You should see December 27th, and there's all the stuff that I shared for you. It's just a bunch of stuff that I found throughout the week that, as always, kind of interested me, and I thought maybe you might want to check it out. But then again, I also shared a little bit of shameless self-promotion, if you will, that link again for my conversation about agorism and capitalism with Roger Sanchez on the Echo Chamber. Well, Roger Sanchez was the hope. I argued it out, if you will, with Agora Roger, and that was on the Echo Chamber a couple of Fridays ago. And I wanted to share that again with you because it was good. I represented. It was a good argument on both sides. I mean, there was solid arguments made by everybody. The comparisons and the compatibility of the two ideals, capitalism and agorism, were compared and challenged the ideas. And we answered questions from the audience. There was a live audience, and the relative conclusions when it comes down to it are yours to make, and to anyone who was listening to the show, theirs to make as well. But if you haven't had a chance, or if you have friends that have questions about it, I made a great showing. I made a great voice for capitalism, and an argument that we don't need to surrender words like capitalism or anarchy to the system, to the negative. We don't have to give those things up, just like we don't have to give up ourselves to the larger idea as a whole. We don't have to sacrifice our words. We don't have to sacrifice ourselves. The point of that, and I make that point a couple of times throughout the argument and throughout the conversation. And it'd be great if you help support the Echo Chamber, because I like what Roger is doing. He's set this up to where he's just doing debates, and I didn't catch it last week, but there was he had a debate, flat earthers and versus round earthers. That's just the kind of things that he has going on. And it's this new program that he started here. It's been running for about a year, I guess. And I guess maybe not quite a year, maybe 4 months or something like that. And I just like what he's doing, and it'd be great if you can support him. And that's it comes down to this whole like, share, follow, subscribe formula that I try to get across. Just take those few extra seconds to make sure that you click the like button, that you follow us, that you share, whatever it is, wherever it is that you're catching the show. Make sure to share it out there, because when we look at the metrics for these things, when we look at what's happening, who's watching and how they're getting there, who's listening, watching sometimes, catching the video again today, caught the video of last week's show with Sherry Voluntary, amazing show. But whatever you're catching us on, whether it's on YouTube with now, we're using Skype anyway, so there's no reason why especially if I'm alone, like today, there's absolutely no reason why I can't catch my own video, because I certainly pay enough money to have the network support and internet capabilities to be able to do so. That's for sure. And to have it be of some decent quality when it comes out on the other end, that's always the question. So wherever you're listening, be it the YouTube or Castbox or Spotify, Pandora, wherever you're at, across the network at Republic Broadcasting, just make sure to like, share, follow, subscribe. The share is the most important one, because that's how the other people are finding it. And you have to. I know you hate Facebook, and I know you hate Twitter, but you have to share there, because I'm looking. I'm looking at these other places like MeWe and Minds and stuff like that, ThinkSpot and places like that, and there's some attention there. There's some people there, but the majority of people, of course, are still on those big boards, on those big social media places. That's where you can find them. That's where the information is being exchanged. That information war, if you will, is going on, and it's all up to you to make sure that you share it across there, because when I look at the Minds and the MeWe and the stuff like that, like I don't know which one it was I was looking at just before the show today. One of them, it gives you a really good idea. Maybe it's MeWe. No, it must be Minds. Then it gives you a good idea of a running total of the people and subscribers and hits and views that you get from your posts. And we've been on there a few months now, and the views only, they're under 1,000. It's under 1,000 views, and I get 1,000 views per post across just the Toward Anarchy page on Facebook. Just one post from there, and getting the likes and shares from the followers and subscribers on that particular page. I guess subscribers is the wrong word, but just that one page, I can get 1,000 hits, 1,000 views in a day. So the battle is still being fought in those places. That it's interesting, because as we watch them mess around with censorship and play with what you can and can't say, they're definitely, I mean, it's painful what they do to you. They really screw you around if you say something they don't want you to say, and they punish you for it. It is very painful. If you're paying attention, your reach, your views, and the way you're seen after you get hit by one of these bans, even a short-term one, it just falls off. It just disappears, and so people are running to the places like the Minds and the MeWe and the ThinkSpot, and there's Float and Parler and a bunch of others. And it's about that free speech, but then they end up over in the other place, and these other places are having the same problem. There's this, what, the Section 230, is that what it is? 203? I don't know. It's one of the things that they're fighting about in coming up here at the end of the year, and trying to fund government and trying to put together a COVID bill. It's been interesting this past week with running up against family and friends and things like that, because of the people like that, because of the holiday. One of the things that I've come across is that so many people, even people that I wouldn't expect to, are just sucked into their TV right now. They're really buying the whole thing. They just, I've been trying to figure out what my own problem was of late. It just, my feelings toward everything. It's the anger. Seeing people wearing masks around the store and around the city, and especially out on the street when there's no one around them, or when they're driving their car and they're all alone. It just, even just in small groups of people where it's technically under the limits, and still seeing people wearing masks, and just the frustration that comes along with it, and all these questions, the fear, the anger, everything that's going on through everybody's minds right now. in trying to cope with the COVID-19 reality, whatever that is. And I wonder if the medical tyranny that's gripped the world has anything to do with it. Gee, I don't know. But of all the things that are happening right now, the virus itself is such low concern, and it does seem to be to everyone else too that I run into, but they're still putting on the masks, and I see people falling for the hype and the fear, and I find myself, of course, getting sucked into it at times, and I have to find that place for myself to get away, to break away from it all. But the this medical tyranny is crazy that's happening, and on top of it, everything it's being used to just push this huge, ridiculous agenda across the board of locking people down, and we're in for another round of it with talk of a second. It's not even second. I don't even know what number we're on right now, but this another round, depending on where you're at. Certainly in the UK, when there's fear of a mutated strain of the virus, and that's just it. That's just that's all I see is just fear, and that's it. Every single headline, and then of course it comes to the end of the year, and everybody's talking about this. Oh well. What about stimulus? And we're trying to get stimulus, and there's all this big argument this last week and the week before, and in the weeks they've been dragging this thing out. They've been stringing people along. They've been stringing. I'll scroll through the headlines, and it's just these headlines that are fed to me based on my own sort of clicking and activity around, and I'll scroll through these headlines, and every other headline is something of driving fear about the why we don't have a stimulus bill, or what it's doing to the economy, and all of these crazy arguments about, oh, when can you expect your stimulus check, before they've even decided on one, because they still at this point have not decided on one. They're still up in the air fighting about it, and it's this huge political game. And then of course come along this week and run into family and friends and everybody, and they're talking about, oh, we have to pass this COVID stimulus bill, and the stimulus bill is so important, and that this is the thing that we have to fight for. And I'm like, what are you people talking about? They're not passing a stimulus bill. They're passing a government funding bill and attaching stimulus to it. So they're playing a political game with the COVID-19 stimulus to pass their political agenda for the next year to run their government. And some of the people, I say that, they look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that they could have done this COVID thing a long, long time ago, before they had to worry about trying to fund government, before they had to make it about shutdowns. I have a number of people friends who work for the government in one way or another, about 51% of them anymore. It seems to be the way it's gone now. So many people rely on that socialism of government. And I listen to them every single week talking about all the potential shutdowns, and how are we going to get paid, and only certain, some of them, they have contingency plans, and their particular branch of government or whatever has a contingency plan, and they'll get paid for X amount of time until they decide. And there's just all this talk about where do I get money, and the economy is trashed, and I can't believe that the virus did this to the entire world. And I'm just still sitting here every time I hear that the virus caused the economic collapse, the virus did this, the virus did that. The virus didn't do any of this. Tyranny did this. Government did this. The people who want to tell you how to live your life and manipulate the things that you do and control your movement and the things that you buy and the things that you enjoy and the job that you do, they did this. The virus didn't do jack squat. Okay, it's killed it. There's that. We'll be back on Toward Anarchy. Cover back up. Don't stop fiddling with it. Stop playing with your mask. And go get a shot. That's all. I keep It's just over and over again, and it is everywhere. It's everywhere, from on the local news, the newsman, the commercials that they play. There's some obnoxious thing going around here, and I imagine they've probably done a similar one for just about everywhere. But it's some 73-year-old man or something, uh, telling me I should get over it, and that I should just put on a mask, and that I should do it for him, and that I should get the vaccine, and I should do it for him, and that for some reason, all of a sudden, um, my life and my health are owed to other people. And they really push that agenda down now, don't they? And it's one of those slippery slope things that's been going on for a long, long time. Just a little bit of control over the health situation, over individual health concerns, just a little bit here and a little bit there over the years. Here's a federal law, here's a state law, here's another law. And well, here we are now. The headline that I saw just before, it sucks because this thing changes constantly. It just changed again on me. Was about the vaccine and about travel, and about how it was CNN, and it said that you're not going to get to travel next year if you don't have a vaccine, that if you're not on a list. And we know that it was back at the end of March, in early April, that I was telling you, watch what happens. Watch what's going on now with this, with what's happening with COVID, all of it that's going on, the hype, the fear, that it would lead to this, to where we are right now, to the quick creation of a vaccine, quick introduction of it, questionable studies, questionable efficacy of the entire thing, and that ultimately that it would be used to control movement. And they've been looking for a reason, a way to do that for a long time. The proverbial they have been looking for a reason to do it, a way to pull it off for a long, long time. And they tried terrorism, and they gave terrorism, sort of 20, 40 years, depending on where you want to gauge that initial try to drive it fear. Certainly in Americans, we're talking 2001, so about 20 years, where they really have been driving that idea home, and where, the meta event that is 9/11 caused all of these other things that had already been talked about for another decade or two before that to be instituted, to be put into place, to move into, use it as an excuse to roll into the Middle East and do a bunch of damage across their sovereign nations, and more importantly, really to do so much damage to this sovereign nation and the individual states, and to centralize more power. And that I don't know any other way to see it. There's levels of incompetence, but incompetence doesn't have to be followed by tyranny. That's my problem with the argument that government is just incompetent. Well, you can be incompetent and do dumb things and not have them affect other people, but you don't have to be incompetent, do dumb things, and force other people to do things your way, to see things your way. That's the tyranny part of it, and it doesn't have to go along with it. And it's the failure, it's the breakdown of that weak, very, very weak argument for it. I wanted to see if maybe possibly here. I'll just do it. I'll refresh. I'll see what the latest is, and we'll just do this real quick in this short bit before we go into the break. Let's see. COVID-19 aid bill remains in doubt as Congress braces for shutdown with Trump. Anthony Q. Warner is being investigated in connection with Nashville Christmas blast, authorities say. I'll talk about that. I'll give you my very first impression, which is all I usually ever give of those things. Mass coronavirus vaccination begins for 450 million across Europe, and there's this thing they're talking about not giving the second vaccination in case. There's weird things going on about just trying to figure out what they're going to do with this second half of the vaccine. Some baseball player died. Some producer on Game of Thrones was murdered. supposedly poisoned. CDC issues new guidance about vaccinations for people with underlying health conditions. CDC recently changed the definition, and this is something I told you again months ago, that was exactly what was happening as they were doing it. I tell you, real time. Watch what's happening. This is happening in real time. Just pay attention, especially vaccine proponents and people who appeal to authority and to a particular authority. In the case of the CDC saying that things are one way or another, they changed the definition of herd immunity. I don't have it directly in front of me. Maybe I can pull it up during the break. And but the CDC changed the definition of herd immunity. We'll come back and talk about some more of these things right here toward end. He looks pretty wild in that picture, Robert Plant there. That's just some bug eyes, boy. He still sounds good for an old man. There's this one show that I watch on YouTube's a couple of guys have been recording themselves for many years. One of those kids that got a video camera and just put his whole life on it, and they do these things now on YouTube, and they're my age, sort of late 40s, somewhere in there. And they do this thing where they look at rock stars, aging rock stars, and seeing where they're at, and they did just another one this week. I think they've only done 6 episodes or something like that of it so far. And they did another one this week, and who was on there? David Coverdale. No, yeah, Whitesnake, was that this one, or was it the previous one? I don't know. They did David Coverdale, and let's see, who else? Kip Winger, Scorpions. Kip Winger still sound pretty good. I mean, if you ever thought he sounded good in the first place, for that sort of candy, bubblegum, pop rock kind of stuff that he produced back in the day. But I don't know. Some of them still rocking. They played something from 2019, and it still sounded good. It's still singing the same song. She's only 17. I think even she's a lot older than 17 these days. Just one of these headlines that I caught as I was scrolling. I kept scrolling through the commercial when I wasn't playing around with my guitar. I think I might do that at some point, turn it on. I thought that might be, I've never done that before. I've never really played my guitar in front of anybody. It's something that I just played myself. I sit in the studio and play. Anytime I was in a band, I was either playing drums or I was singing. And so I've never played guitar. So I don't know. It's one of those things I thought about. I could turn it on. It sits right here. It's not a prop. It's in the background of the, you can see my amp, and you can see okay, you see it over the other shoulder because I moved it. You can see it sitting there. They're not props. Everything in the background, in my background, is not a prop. None of it is all my stuff. It just all happens to be here, and I use it for a background. That's not quite the same thing, I don't think. Props, they sit there and they just look. These are actually all functional things that I use. So my Blu-rays and things like that are down there along with it. But I was scrolling through the break when I wasn't playing the guitar, and I saw this. U.S. COVID stats may be unreliable for weeks. Here's why. And that's Forbes. And that's just hilarious because again, months ago, back when this whole thing started, I told you, do not trust the numbers on this, and that the numbers will not be reliable at all, if they are ever reliable. That they probably won't be reliable for years, but if they are ever at all. Just to finish reading these. I thought this was kind of cool. I only just saw this. Archaeology over ancient fast food counter ruins in Pompeii, and it's just this basin of stone in a marketplace that has some frescoes painted on it. It's just an interesting little thing. New Year's Eve storm in the U.S. Violence against women surges during COVID-19 crisis as Senate Republicans block anti-domestic violence. All about political. All political. Boston doctor suffers first known serious reaction to Moderna coronavirus vaccine. Yeah, okay. A lot of talk about the vaccines this past week. They're saying the president himself came out. The president-elect came out himself and said that the darkest days are ahead of us still. So they still expect this. That it's not over. It's there. It's just not over with. They keep pushing the agenda, and they create this $2.3 trillion or $1.3 trillion spending bill, and they attach the stimulus to it, the COVID stimulus, supposedly 900 billion, and this stuff is, they're batting this stuff back and forth. So I apologize if the numbers are not what they were 5 minutes ago. And then you get to looking at that stimulus, and you get to talking about the numbers, and it's $600 per adult, and so that comes out to less than 200 billion for individuals, less than 200 billion of that money that's going out to individuals. So $700 billion or more initially, currently, a couple of minutes ago, planned to possibly be included in this COVID bill is ridiculous spending in places that, I mean, it's such a joke. I can't even begin to express the feelings, the back and forth, the mistrust, the anger, all of the emotions and ideas that will flash through my head as I'm sitting here like I am, as I'm talking to you, scrolling through and just looking at the uselessness and everything that is being pushed on people about the COVID, about wearing masks, why you should wear a mask even after getting COVID-19 or the vaccine. The masks aren't going away. I said that. Can public transportation survive the pandemic? Experts warn of death spiral. That's something that's going, again, fear. Of course, some places it will, some places it won't, but public transportation shouldn't be around anyway. The cities shouldn't be paying to move people about. People should be moving themselves about. So it's no big loss when it comes down to it. But there are other things, business, so many restaurants. And what about sporting events? Will sporting events ever come back in any sort of sense? These things are built around the entire sporting, professional sport industry, from college, really from high school on up, is built around shoving as many people into as big a place as you can possibly get to watch these events. And now that's not acceptable. It's not even feasible. It won't even happen because too many, especially big businesses, that stand to lose so much when they're actually the ones that could actually stand up and fight any of these edicts that the government is passing down, don't. Instead of Kroger and Walmart and the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball, any of these, instead of these rich, very powerful organizations coming to the defense, even to their own defense, for the defense of their own property rights and the defense to make their own decisions about how they care for their employees and what services and what things they provide, what benefits they provide to their employees, and they're not stepping up. They're not, and so we're alone. And there's a very small percentage of us alone out here that see what's going on and see that there's no turning back at this point. The CDC's failed race against COVID-19, a threat underestimated, and a test overcomplicated. Oh man, don't even get started on the tests and whether or not they work, and the fact that there's no flu this year, and yet there's so much of the COVID-19, and I think they released the deaths for the year, and that it's just slightly over. It may be the most deaths in America in 1 year, but it's not by that much. It's by a very small number, and remember that some things that would have deaths would have been attributed to in previous years have been taken over by COVID-19, and so we don't. It just tells you, like they said up there in that other headline, that you can't trust the numbers. And I just heard a drop of 400,000. Yeah, I don't know what the number is. I don't. That's you can't. There's no trusting any of the numbers. And see, it's like 2.9 million or something like that. But then on an average or something for any number of the last 5 or 10 years, and we tipped it like 3 million or I don't know. I give up trying to even figure it out, because it's like they've been talking about the unemployment numbers and about how jobs are increasing, things like that. And they argue that it's the lowest in a number of years, just to play on those words right there. And then it's not, because these numbers get readjusted and readjusted again, 3 times throughout the year. That's the unemployment numbers, and they always get adjusted in the other direction, in the negative direction, whatever you want to call that. The employment numbers are up. Most people, many more people are unemployed than they say are employed from any given week or month or year to the next, and so then we have this problem where you just can't trust the numbers, and you can't trust who's using the numbers or what numbers they're using, because you just go through and you selectively pick numbers from the sources that you feel identify closer with the goal that you're trying to reach, and the message that you're trying to get across. Fauci says up to 90% of population needs to get vaccinated for herd immunity against virus. You notice this is a thing that he's done, that he's pushed this number up, because the true number is more like 97%. And we've never, ever, 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 ever been close to 90%, 97% vaccination rate in America, nowhere even near 97% on any virus or disease that they have a vaccination for. None of them ever have come that close. And so that's why I had mentioned earlier that they changed the definition of herd immunity. Well, that's why, because they're playing with the numbers, and they're making it, they're just trying to make themselves look better and sound better than they do, because they just change their story from 1 minute to the next and try to confuse people. And the difference between a natural herd immunity and a manufactured herd immunity, and those questions that come up, and it's just a big shell game, and you're the one that is being fooled, for sure, if you're just listening to the news, to the nightly news, and you're just taking what you see. The syringe that makes me cringe. I just seen this just before the show started. Some pilot in Germany flew a route specifically designed to draw out a syringe. It drew it out, and it makes me cringe. That syringe makes me cringe. The push, and the ignorance that is behind the push, and the fear that's behind the push. Oh man, if you're taking the vaccine, you are crazy, or brave, or foolish. I don't know any other way to put it. There's just a mass confusion about what exactly is happening with the. One of the things that came up this week, again with the side effects, I just started to mention it here. One of the things that had come up, and I had picked this story out early in the week. The 21st. Back on the 21st is when I came across this story, and I shared it. TowardAnarchy.com. Look for December 27th, and it's just one of the links that I shared. It's a suspicion about the PEG nanoparticles in the COVID-19 vaccine triggering allergic reactions. And it's funny, because it's been touted as that, it's been couched as that for this entire week. They've been talking about suspicion, growing concerns about these PEG nanoparticles, and all it is part of the delivery system. It's an adjuvant. the purpose is that it coats the mRNA, the messenger proteins. It coats them in the PEG so that it fools the body into not attacking them because they're foreign. They don't normally exist, or they're not coming in the right way. They're not being produced the right way by the body. And so you have to trick the body into accepting them until they get to their destination. And the thing about them saying that there's a suspicion about it is ridiculous, because this PEG nanoparticle delivery system has been known for like a decade to cause these allergic reactions. and that's the point of adjuvants. That's the reason that they put adjuvants. This is a little bit different, a little bit, and I don't want to try to get too technical on this stuff, because one, if I misstate something just accidentally, throwing this stuff off the cuff, it makes me sound foolish, and people don't want to believe what I'm saying when it's purely just an accident and not it's not malicious, and it's not an ignorance. It's just a mistake of words. But in short, the point of the adjuvants is to cause an allergic reaction. It's to trick the body into reacting a certain way to the vaccine. It causes the immune response. That's what the monkey genes, or the egg, the egg yolk, or there's all these different things. Aluminum has been used, and different metals. There's all of these things that have been injected into the skin. Peanuts, all kinds of allergens. They just put that's why I call it chemical concoctions. That's why I call it guesswork. Because people are allergic to different things, and then if you trace allergens back, going back through a person's vaccination history, and you might be able to say that a vaccine actually gave them the allergy, and then of course this suspicion about the PEG nanoparticles causing allergic reactions in people, and we're talking about it bypassing the defense mechanisms in this case, not trying to actually cause them, but actually bypassing them to sneak in, to get into your DNA. Scary, scary stuff. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy. Go to towardanarchy.com. Look for December 27th. It's the last show of 2020. Unfortunately, I don't think 2020 is going to end in 2020. It's going to linger and be with us for a long time. The ramifications of everything that has happened over the last almost the entire year. I mean, it depends on who you ask. It depends on where you get your numbers from. When things first started to go south, when this virus appeared in America, and how long it's been with us, and the effect that it's really had on us over this period. It's just not known. December 27th, that link that I was talking about, the suspicion about the PEG nanoparticles. Jump in on that. You can check that out. Also, a couple other links that I shared up there. There was something about the stimulus package. I put that up there. It was earlier in the week, too, so who knows exactly what has changed about it. But it's still the same battle here at the end of the week, so I don't know that there's anything new to be heard in or seen in that at all. The lockdowns, the battles that are occurring both politically and socially on the streets and in the courtrooms it's exposed these pre-existing tensions that have been building up to this, where something like a pandemic, or the guise of a pandemic, the appearance of a pandemic, could cause this much tyranny, this much confusion about what our freedoms are and what the role of government is, particularly in America. I mean, you expect in other places around the world for authoritarians to use a crisis to seize power and to place controls on people. But realize that that's just government. That's not any particular flavor of government. That's what governments do. That's the idea behind Crisis and Leviathan, the idea that government uses, that authority uses crisis to seize more power, and that there's almost there's no historical precedent for powers being taken away and then given back. They have to be taken back. They're not the people that took our rights, that took America away from the people. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I don't really know, because I'm not going to be a martyr for a non-cause, and that's, I think, a lot of people are mistaken about it. They end up being a martyr for a non-cause, or for some, or even worse, some political cause. And so all these tensions are showing. And there's this article up there from Reason that I thought just talked about how what's going on now is, it's just going to continue, and it's going to get worse as far as that goes. Both the political and social unrest will continue to grow and grow. I mean, we'll have to talk about Nashville. I'll do it. We're getting ready to go. This is a short segment right here. We're going into a break for the top of the hour, but when we come back, I'll talk about Nashville, and I'll give you my impression of what I thought, because that's what I try to go by. I try to get that first impression, and I'm not talking about an uninformed impression. I'm talking about an impression based on the evidence, the pictures, everything that's coming out before everybody else gets their 2 cents into it, and before they start telling me what I'm supposed to know. So we will go into the top of the hour, and we'll be right back here on Toward Anarchy. Okay, we're off into hour number 2. Go to towardanarchy.com to follow along. Look for December 27th. I'm just here wrapping up 2020, talking about vaccines and masks and COVID-19 driven tyranny. Some links I shared for you. Just make sure to like, share, follow, subscribe, do all those things. Just take a minute right now. Just take it doesn't even take a minute unless you use an Xbox to watch all your stuff, which I do. My main entertainment center is controlled by Xbox One S, and so I have to power everything on and go through a bunch of menus but I still do it. I make it a point to do it. Give that like, give that share, that follow. Be sure to subscribe, and as always, just follow along. Because it's an interesting conversation that we have every week, even if it's just me talking to myself or you. When I say we, I just you and I, we do this thing together. I'm looking at the end of 2020, and I'm looking into 2021, and I'm just thinking, wow, where do we go? And I see not very good things, certainly for people who aren't paying attention. So they're not going to see things when they're right in front of them, and for people who are paying too much attention. You know what I mean? This is at that point where you have to just shut things off for a little while and just tune out for a little bit and clear your head and get back to what's important. Get back to the family, taking care of your mental health and your physical health, and doing these things to take your mind off of what's going on out there, the insanity of $600 politicized stimulus checks for months and months and months of government enforced lockdowns and shutdowns of businesses and just economic activity across the board. But there is something that you can do, even if it is just that $600 stimulus check. You can buy a nice AR for $600. Just make sure you do some shopping. Make sure you talk to your friends who have one to make sure that you get the right components and you get the right ghost. There's no reason why you have to build one that has any numbers or anything on it anymore. Completely build that thing as a ghost. Or you can go to Home Depot and you can buy some rope and some 2x4s and some galvanized L angles and some bolts to hold those together, hold the wood and those angles together. And you can buy yourself a nice plain sheet of metal and put a nice sharp edge on it, and build yourself a guillotine for less than the $600. And well, we know what we use guillotines for, don't we? It's just one of many memes that I saw going around this week, offering suggestions of ways to fight tyranny with your $600 check, as some of them were more productive than others. I don't know about really spending $600 to build yourself a guillotine, or to buy tar and feathers to tar and feather politicians with. Because, well, for so many reasons. One, you buy 600. You buy yourself a new gun. You buy yourself a nice new gun. I mean, you can buy a Glock if you want to buy a handgun. I mean, $600 will get you a Glock, especially if you know the right person at the right time. Yeah, there's nothing like buying electronic goods and firearms from crackheads and other people who have other fixes that will sell off things like that when it's time to get their fix. Hey, I admit it. I've sold a gun to pay for my comic book habit before. But then I supplied the habit, and I turned around and I sold the comic book for a lot more and bought myself another gun. But that's that's just the way I do business. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. William Pitt the Younger said that, and he's absolutely right. And you can see it across the nation and around the world right now. It's necessary that we wear masks. It's necessary that we get a vaccine. It's necessary that we control travel. I so wish that let's see if I can pull it up again. I'll just go to CNN, because it was literally the last thing I saw before I turned on the microphone today, and it was that we will not be able to travel without having the vaccine and having proof. And let's see if I can find it. I don't do CNN. Sometimes their stories end up being fed to me. Let's see. If you want to travel next year, you may need a vaccine passport. Let's see. This was posted 9:12 a.m. this morning. Boy, why don't you load some more pop-ups and a few more advertisements and some more useless crap on the screen while you're at it. Please start the video by default too, because that's exactly what I wanted to do when I go to read an article. Is fire up a video and play a commercial for a movie that I watched yesterday. Stupid website developers. Oh God! And there's just this garbage ads across the side, just these clickbait crap. It's no wonder people run off to their own little corner of the internet to get away from. Who cares about all this crap that you just popped up on my screen? And now I can finally get to the story. Let's see. Coronavirus vaccines are starting to roll out in the U.S. Several companies and technology groups have begun developing smartphone apps. I've been sharing some information about that with you all along. Did I mention how they decided that they didn't want to they use the opportunity, they use COVID-19 as another opportunity to build a new database to track Americans instead of even updating their own. No, we're not even going to bother adding the information that we take out of this. We're going to build a whole new medical database that can be shared all across the nation and around the world with the touch of a button. Let's see. So yeah, several companies and technology groups have begun developing smartphone apps or systems for individuals to upload details of COVID-19 tests and vaccinations. Common Trust Network, initiative by Geneva-based nonprofit The Commons Project, and the World Economic Forum, has partnered with several airlines, including Cathay Pacific, JetBlue, Lufthansa, Swiss Airlines, United Airlines, and Virgin, as well as hundreds of health systems across the United States and the government of Aruba. That's an interesting thing to point out. That speaks to me of somebody who's writing their article based on um, centralized information, like information received from the AP. Common Pass app the Common Pass app, that's what they've made. It's created by a group that allows users to upload medical data such as the COVID-19 test results or eventually a proof of vaccination by a hospital or medical professional generating a health certificate or pass in the form of a QR code that can be shown to authorities without revealing sensitive information. For travel, the app lists health pass requirements at the points of departure and arrival based on your itinerary. You can be, this is a quote, you can be tested every time you cross a border. You cannot be vaccinated every time you cross a border. Thomas Crampton, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for the Commons Project, stressed the need for a simple, easy, transferable set of credentials or a yellow card referring to the paper document generally issued as proof of vaccination. Yeah, and now another pop-up, just randomly. Oh, large tech firms are also getting in on the act. IBM developed its own app called Digital Health Pass, which allows companies and venues to customize the indicators they would require for entry, including tests, temperature checks, and vaccination records. Credentials corresponding to those indicators are stored on a mobile wallet. Let's see. In an effort to address one challenge around returning to normalcy after vaccines are distributed widely, developers may now have to confront other challenges ranging from privacy issues to representing the varied effectiveness of different vaccines. Oh my God. It's a game to these people. It's all a game. The article continues, but that's what we're looking at. I had to read that. I had to read some of it just because I had just seen it just before the show started, and I knew that this is where we were headed. So many people have talked about this for years. I said 2 years ago now that the vaccine issue was going to be the breaking point. That it was it was because it was obvious from what was happening across the nation. With the measles outbreaks, 2017, 2018, in and around that area, it was obvious what was happening and what the push would be for, and how we would get here. To anybody who was paying attention, to be sure, and this whole confusion, this paranoia, the fear, everything that's brought about by what's going on in relation to COVID and the tyranny that's popped up around it has got everything in question. And there's a word that's left our vocabulary all of a sudden. I used it earlier, terrorism. It's gone out of our vocabulary all of a sudden, but now with Nashville happening, it's back, or at least they're making it's. I looked at this thing when I first saw it, and I saw it fairly early on Christmas morning. Got up and was sitting here and watching family open presents and watching Wonder Woman 1984 on HBO Max there, and I saw the pictures, heard the initial claims of a bomb, and just saw the very first pictures before any analysis, just the earliest pictures that were coming up, and I thought, this is made to look like a populated area that's been hit, but it's not. And it's like down the street. And then all of a sudden they started talking about, and that was one of my first impressions, like, okay, this thing stinks already. There's something weird about this. And then immediately they started talking about there being some kind of announcement made, supposedly coming from the trail. I've heard it. I've since heard the announcement. It's a female voice saying that if you're in the vicinity, if you can hear this, that you need to get away, that there's a bomb about to go off. And that's weird, because the first headline I saw was they used the word terrorism. That this is an intentional terrorist act, is what they were saying. And then as the day goes on, more stuff starts appearing. Now there's footage, and it's the weirdest footage. It's all infrared that I've seen so far. Only one piece of footage that isn't infrared footage that might be, or night camera footage ultimately, is nighttime black and white footage. There's only one piece of footage that I've seen so far that gives any kind of hint, possibly maybe, to question of whether it was the RV or whether the explosion came from somewhere else, and potentially a missile. They closed down airspace over Nashville, and that other footage, that black and white, that nighttime infrared footage, there's this short blip, a second or two at most, of footage that shows something, some kind of cloud ejection or injection. It looks like it could be a missile trail. It could be a missile being launched from. Either way, it's definitely weird. And my initial impression of them trying to make it look, of them purposely trying to make it look like it was a populated area, but that it wasn't really, that it was like down the street from what was really populated, like that was purposely in this dead section. And there's this argument about them, about the political right possibly have been trying to blow up, or maybe I'm sorry, this is a confusion. So let me make sure to get this straight. Okay, it could be the political right trying to send a message to the political left over the elections, because supposedly the voting machines, or the data from the voting machines, was in this building that's right there. But this attack on the surface is nothing. I mean, it blew out some windows, and then you see the footage of the building. They claim it's an AT&T building, and that there's there's an NSA farm there, server farm there. Dominion voting machines were supposedly being delivered there, and that maybe the left was actually the Clintons and the Obamas, the Clinton gangsters, were actually taking out their own collection of the servers, or the data from the servers, whatever was supposed to be there, taking it out so that it doesn't expose their fraud. That's supposedly one of the arguments. But then they show the facade for this AT&T building, and it's nothing like the building that has been blown up. That they show it's not blown up; it's just damaged on the outside. If it is the same building, it's massively changed from from the picture I saw to the picture of the destruction. I mean, massively changed. It's a completely different building. Like, they closed off all the windows and put them in new places or something. It's just the weirdest thing. And the AT&T building has a brick facade all around it. But you can't tell. You can't tell from a picture that's taken from across the street from who knows when, whether it's really a facade or if it's really brick. So if it's a facade of brick, an explosion could bring it down, and it would leave weird paneling, whatever was underneath the facade, whatever made up the wall itself before the facade was placed on it, could look funny. But there's no brick in the explosion of out in front of the building that they say is this AT&T building. There's no brick on it. Where did all the brick go? So it was either a facade, and it's all sort of melted off or blasted off in the explosion, and now this weird different metal plate facade is up there, but it's the same color. So it's like it was painted. The whole thing just stinks to high heaven to me. There's something going on. There's some political game going on here with this thing. I don't know. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. Antennas on the roof, like in the EMP. There's talk of EMP. There's talk about communications having been down in that time. There's a suggestion that it was used as a distraction to or kill someone politically, or to erase data, compromise systems. There's so much speculation going around about the thing, and I just thought it was weird today to get up and see the person of interest, and the fact that yesterday they came out with this person's name, and then today they put the Q in the name. The middle initial Q. All of a sudden, everywhere I see the name, all of a sudden that Q is there, and that just it's like a glaring red siren. Just it's glaring and it's glaring. I can see it and I can hear it, and it's flashing in front of my eyes, and I don't know what to think of it. So I'm not jumping to any conclusions. We'll be back here on Toward Anarchy. My my mind is aglow with whirling, transient nodes of thoughts careening through a cosmic vapor of invention. Somebody say ditto, please. Please. Yeah, interesting. Ken and I were talking during the break, and he just brought up how this connection, the Q thing, because he's working there in the studio doing things, and it doesn't necessarily always hear exactly what I'm saying, but he thought I said Q, and so he mentioned that these people, this group, this collective, this whatever Q is still a thing. There are people in positions of power who support it and have pledged to it and believe in it. And one of the things that Q has talked about, that they've talked about over the years, has been disclosure. A lot of different things. Just disclosure about all the things that government has been involved in all the years. Not just disclosure about UFOs, aliens, and stuff like that. Although I don't know if you've been paying attention to this. I don't know if you noticed this or not. Over the last few weeks, it started out with Israeli intelligence, I do believe, who came out and said that there are aliens, that we've been in contact with them, and that we're just hiding the information from the general population. And the story continues to go. In fact, I had to dump these because I had done this. I found myself getting caught, as I sometimes do, getting wrapped up in it, and so I just dump. I just get rid of it all. And I did that recently with a bunch of headlines that I had snapped screenshots of, but I don't know if there was any more. Yeah, here's one. Let's see. Senior government officials keep saying that UFOs and aliens are real. That was New York Magazine on Thursday that had that headline. Let's see if I caught any others. Let's see. RV that exploded in Nashville, broadcast warning. Yeah, that happened right after. Vaccine volatility. This strategist says 2021 will be the year of the V, and here's how to play it. Virus, vaccine, and volatility. You know that 2021, I believe, is that right? Boy, I hate to sound foolish, but I believe that's when the events of V for Vendetta take place. Is that right? Is it 2021? The virus is released in the UK, and now all of a sudden we have the explosion of this new version of the virus that's out in the UK, and they're all worried about being locked down. Yeah, it's weird. I wish I thought it was more than just coincidence. But I don't. When I see the Q in the middle of that name, it just says something to me. When I see the V repeatedly used in relation to this period of time and the fact that there's a virus and the fact that they're talking about vaccines, and you know that the story, you understand this, right? That the story in V for Vendetta isn't that the virus killed people, right? It's that the cure killed them. Israel's Netanyahu warns of new pandemic spreading with unknown virus, closes borders. Picture of Mike Pence getting a fake vaccine. I don't even want to talk about that. I've seen all these pictures of these needles that are not needles that you use to give vaccines, and they still have the cap on them when they push them up against their arms. I'm not imagining this stuff. These things happen. Let's see. Starting to sound like a cult? No kidding. Posting a picture of yourself getting vaccinated is a public profession of your discipleship. It's the baptism of this new religion, an outward display of inner change and commitment. That guy's psychotic. Here's the Pelosi one. Pelosi claims some in Congress say I'm faith-oriented, so I don't believe in science, and they show her getting the vaccine. This one does not appear. This one actually looks like it's real. And I purposely caught that one because I've seen all of these fakes, deep fakes. It's so hard to tell anymore. I watched this thing the other day. It looked like a dragon attacking a football stadium. And by football, I mean soccer. Or was it even baseball? Yeah, maybe it was baseball. All I know is that they made it look like a dragon was attacking a stadium, and it looks so real on the screen. You can't tell that it's not real unless you know that dragons don't exist. Except for the reactions of the people in the audience. Nobody's running to get away from the buildings collapsing around them or anything like that. All right, we got another half hour to go. We'll come back with some more right here on Toward Anarchy. Okay, TowardAnarchy.com is the place to follow along as always. Looking for December 27th. Do me a favor, like, share, follow, subscribe. I tried to make the share thing as easy as possible for you on any of these show pages that I do. The show page for today, the specific December 27th page. There's always this row of links right up at the top. They make it real easy to share across most of the major social media platforms for sure, as well as your email and Twitter and a few things like that. So it's very, very easy to do. Just click those buttons, take that second to share the information out there, because that's how people are getting it. It's you sharing it. So if you're not sharing it, then it's not getting out there. You understand that? You have to do it. It's all on you. It's up to you. Do you get what I'm saying? It's been an interesting week. An interesting couple of weeks, especially with the election and everything that's gone on, and so I just want to get this straight. This is the point that we're at right now, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but so the possibilities are martial law declared to protect the integrity of democracy and the voting process, or on January 21, the commies take over and surrender the U.S. to the Chinese. Is that right? Those are the options? You voters, I mean, you really know how to almost pick them. Almost. Just, oh man, the whirling, the spinning, the trying to keep up with it all. I can only just imagine what it's like anymore to be a normal person in that sense of not plugged in. And mind you, I purposely make it a point to only stay like half plugged in, just sort of half the way there. Just enough of my toe in the water to tell whether or not it's safe to jump in. So I know before I dive in whether or not I'm in trouble. I'm not a water guy. I've almost drowned in my life. I'm paranoid of it. So I'm sticking my toe in the pool. I'm testing it out before I dive in. And so I'm only just exposed. I'm trying just to expose myself just a little bit, just enough that I can legitimately say that I have some clue about what is going on in the world and in politics in general. Everything's politics now. Everything is politicized. There is nothing that does not have a political bent to it anymore. You cannot turn on a TV, open a magazine, a newspaper, a book, radio, turn on a radio. There's nothing you can do that doesn't have some political motivation in it. Even this show is politically motivated. It's motivated to replace the existing political systems with your own responsibility for what you do and the things that you do in a voluntary society. But it's still a political message, as it were, because it's anti-political. So no matter what, you're trapped in the political message, and Americans are just so horribly divided right now. Nothing I've ever seen before in my life, and I'm almost 50, so I've seen an interesting period in my time. One, technology, of course, across the board. Everything that we understand about today and everything that we function on today has in terms of technology and in our understanding of our universe and our world comes from things that have come about in my time, or deeper analysis of things that came before now, afforded by the use of technology and the different tools that have been developed in my time and have come out. And so I've really grown up with it. I really find myself, my generation, in a very interesting place. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before. The Gen X generation, we're in a weird place because the people before us didn't grow up with the technology. They've had to adopt it. I grew up with the technology, but still had to adopt it. Still had to learn how to use it and how to program it. I didn't study Spanish or Japanese or something like that in terms of languages. Instead, I studied computers and I studied their language, and I think that a lot of people in my generation have. They didn't have a lot of choice, but now we're on the other side of that now. And this is a problem with tyranny and using technology and it's being in control of the technology. It can use it to alter perceptions as well as alter reality now at this point, particularly when the people who are growing up now are so immersed in it that they're just immersed in it as tools. It's like generations of people who to this day still can't work on their own car. They can't change a tire or change the spark plugs. Just some of the simple little things that you should be able to do on basically any car. Just imagine that. Now apply that same thought about how many people you've met in your lifetime, how many women, children, other men that you've met that don't work on their own vehicles, that don't know how, have no concept of it. Multiply that by millions, because many more people have more computers and technology use throughout their life and influence throughout their life than the car does. As big an influence as the car is, that tells you something about the technology and how pervasive it is and surrounding us. And so the people coming up today aren't learning how to control that technology. They're not learning how to make that technology work for them because all the tools don't already exist. When I first started building web pages, Most people didn't know what a website was. They'd never heard of one before. If they'd heard of anything, they might have heard of AOL. They might have heard of Comcast. Was it Comcast? Might have heard of a couple of others. I'm trying to think of one of the CompuServe. That's what I was trying to think of. A few things like that they may have heard of, but they didn't know what the internet was, what the World Wide Web was, until they broke out of that. And some number of years later, 98 maybe, by then people really figured it out, and there was no America Online was going away. CompuServe was probably dead by then. Yeah. So we have this way. The Gen Xers, I myself, maintain a weird position in reality when it comes to technology and the use of technology and the understanding of it and how we go forward. I think we have a better grasp of it than most who are coming up, and certainly before us. Most of the people before us, certainly if they weren't creating it, they didn't know it, and had to come along and adopt it later in their lives. And so I think that those people are more likely to be controlled by it. They're probably not likely to do what I've done or what the network done, where Public Broadcasting Network has done, where we've gone and we've carved out our own little niche out of the internet. We've done everything that we can to grab, a couple of keywords, a couple of ideas, and just run with them and try to. It literally is. It's just carving at it in this ridiculous space filled with millions and billions of people and ideas just flitting back and forth. Our information, if you could weigh it would far surpass our physical creations. If you could actually weigh how much information we've exchanged and how much information exists, it would physically outweigh our creations, our real world creations. And of course, our real world creations just outweighed us. That's something that just happened here. We've actually now made more total weight in things than there are people and their total weight on the planet. The interesting little thing. I didn't read too much about it. Just saw the headline and was glancing at it as just one more one more thing that could potentially be talked about. One more idea to cloud up the mind with, and there are so many. What's the next one? Grab it out of thin air and run with it. That's all you can do at this point. You try to keep yourself a little bit sane. Have some places. This is something that Sherry and I were talking about last week on the show, and it's a theme that's been running through my mind and has come up a bit here more and more as I'm involved with real people. I'd shut myself off from real people for a long time, backed away, but I put myself back out there again, and I'm around people and having real conversations again, and just one more one more aspect of the whole mental health crisis that already exists in America and around the world for any number of reasons, be it the food, the drugs, the programming, but now that exists through the fear that's been created through the COVID, this weird tool used like no other tool has ever been used before so successfully, and it has so much to do with an understanding of the technology and understanding how people can control and manipulate things, and particularly information, because I spent in that time growing up learning to use the computers, learning to use the technology, and investigating the internet. I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I'm not even playing with you. If you're thinking of it, yes, I just saw that. I've seen that. Yes, that too. Uh-huh. Yeah, and that too. All across the internet, all through the years, and it's about that information um, the ability to absorb it, understand it, keep what's important, and move on. Get rid of the rest, anything that's just excess baggage. And we have a serious problem with that going forward, because now it's not just a matter of the individual making a concerted effort to try to figure out what's right, to try to figure out what's correct, to try to get into the information and disseminate from what is available what is the truth, what is important. That's so much more complicated now by having reached this point. We've been at it for a long time. It's something that for years and years doing this show, the previous iteration of this show back on Republic Broadcasting Network years ago, something that I talked about, and I would even focus on. I would try to capture it. And I even talked about this before they did it in TED Talks, before it was a big thing. Talked about how they were manipulating search data and how they were manipulating the information that you could find. Because I grew up with it. I watched it changed from being I watched the internet changed from being a place where you went out and found it. Well, it's an interesting thing. Okay, it initially started where you were stuck in a little box like an AOL online, something like that. But that was a very short period of time before people realized that they could. It's like a 3-year, 4-year period where people realized that they could break out of that and go find other stuff. And so for that short period, it was really compartmentalized. But that's just, let's call that the introduction. That's opening the door. That's dipping the foot, dipping the toe in the pool before you dive in. After that, it expanded, exploded. You just had to know what you wanted to find.
MySpace.
MySpace. You had to know what you wanted to find out there, and to do it and to find it. That's what you did. You went out and you looked for it. Now all the information is again recompartmentalized. I talked about this before, where it's all shrunken back down into small little groups instead of everybody enjoying the renaissance of information and free flow of communication out there on the internet. Everybody is run off to their own little holes, their own little sects, and try to lock themselves down, lock other people out to keep them from interfering in their in I don't know, whatever their vision of their world is. And that information control has become easier and easier to manipulate as that has occurred. It's so much easier because for the most part, most people, and I'm even guilty of this myself, even though I go out and search, but I still purposely have information fed to me by computers and by design, where I go out and I choose the information that I want to come to me, as well as I allow computers to develop algorithms to think that it knows me and choose the stories and things for me, and it actually does really actually pretty well. If you watch me, listen to me read my the headlines, if unless I'm skipping over them, every other one is about Wonder Woman 1984 or comic books or something like that. So just because I leave those out doesn't mean that it's ignoring them and just trying to feed me just the crazy information that I share with you, the scary headlines that they want you to be feared of. It's so much fear and it's that in and of itself is a weird thing, because it's we gotta go into commercial. It's going to ruin my thought. I'll come back. I'll try to remember exactly what it is that I'm going to say to you, and we'll wrap up the show here on Toward It. To get across to you are all around you, and it's not so blatant. It's not so black and white as the movies might have you believe. You know, They Live is a perfect example. You remember the scene where Nada first puts on the glasses and wanders out onto the street, and he starts seeing the signs: naked woman, almost naked woman on a beach, sunning, telling you to go on vacation. And then he puts the glasses on, the Hoffman lenses, and he sees that it actually says marry and reproduce in black and white. And then he's walking further down the street, and this is before he sees any of the aliens, the interdimensional beings that they are. They're not aliens. He's walking past the newsstand, and there's all the magazines and the books and the packs of cigarettes, and even the money. The money that they're holding in their hand is in black and white when he's wearing the Hoffman lenses, and it says, "This is your master" on it. And as he's scanning past the shelves with all the magazines on there, the books read, cooperate, obey authority, doubt humanity, no ideas, consume, don't think, honor apathy, marry and reproduce, watch TV. And it's all in black and white when you have the Hoffman lenses on. And that's the analogy, right? Is when you're awake, you actually see things for what they are, and it's even painful that you see them. He experiences pain, and it hurts his brain, and he doesn't know what to think about it, and he has to take the glasses off and take a break from it all for a while. This is all, if you haven't noticed, those are all themes that run through my reality, that run through this show, that run through the network, and all of the voices. But before I went into the break, I was talking about this information control, and I caution you to assume that all the information is bogus, and I think that was really what I wanted my point to be as I started to go into the break, where I would have gone with it. Is that I just want you to take all the input that you can or that you need to have an understanding of something, and don't assume that it is useless because of the place that you see it. If it's a CNN article or something like that, don't assume that it's useless, because even the information that's bogus is telling you something. It should be telling you something about the reality of the situation. Even the bogus, bad information should give you some hint at the good information. It's some hint at why they're covering up the good information, why they want you to see their point of view versus another point of view. It's seeing the enemy from the inside, I guess. Next week on the show, we'll get right back on track. We will not miss anything at all. We'll start the year off with Craig Hargis talking about Christian anarchy. Thank you all for tuning in. You take care.